God calls us to love one another. John 13:33 and 34 says, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." So how are we supposed to do that? Some people are harder to love than others. But how do we grow in God's love? Let this empty bottle remind you of you, and you, and you. Let this pretty bottle remind us of God's love. The red can remind us of the blood that Jesus shed for each of us for the forgiveness of sin. Now back to my question. How do we grow or get filled with more of God's love? We get filled with God's love when we hear that Jesus died on the cross and rose again for our sins. We get filled with God's love when we find out that He is a Father to us and loves us because we are His children. We get even more love when we find out that He is never going to leave us and is always there for us. Knowing and believing these truths are great ways for our love to grow. Have you ever wished you had so much love that it would just pour over into other people's lives? Like your friends' lives or your family's lives, or even other lives you come in contact with? How can this happen? In 1 Peter 1:22, Peter says, "Love one another deeply from the heart." The kind of deep love can only happen with prayer. Here we have a test tube of dissolved yeast. Yeast makes things grow, right? Like the bread we saw a couple weeks ago. Now let's let this yeast represent your prayers to God to help your love grow so that it overflows to all those around you. Let's add our prayers to what we already know is true about God and see what happens. Wow! When God fills us up with His love, it spills out of us, and we can share that love with others. I want you to remember to continue to fill yourselves up with God's love through prayer and by reading the Bible and listening to people who tell you about Jesus. When you do this, God's love will overflow to all you need.